Yo guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Ro2R Review. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about in a long time because GameStop has been back in the news again. So I'm actually several days late to the conversation on this one, actually probably closer to a week, which means it might not be the best video for me to make. I don't necessarily know that many people will be invested in the GameStop conversation so many days after this story kind of became a big deal. But it is something that I want to talk about. I think it's important. I'm definitely invested in this conversation, and I have discussed GameStop a few times over the years as they've been in the news for pretty much never anything good. I can't remember the last time they had any sort of good or positive news story, which is a shame, and for reasons that I'm going to get into. But nevertheless, there has been some traction on the GameStop front the last couple of days. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this, and I'm going to get into it. It is definitely sad stuff, but it's also stuff that we maybe knew to expect because GameStop hasn't been the smartest company for years, and it's just a mess. So the long and the short of it is that GameStop is basically just in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble, you guys, and it's sad to see. And there's been a major thing that recently happened that kind of has showcased exactly how much trouble they're truly in, and we're probably staring down the barrel of the end of GameStop. And I have a lot of feelings on this idea and GameStop going away, GameStop being in major trouble, what's been going on with them as far as their success. But there is the main thing that kind of kicked this off, like I said, and that is most recently in the last week, it became public information that GameStop is apparently trying to get themselves sold. They essentially want to be bought out as a company because their profits have been so low and they haven't been growing as a company and they haven't been making a lot of money or doing so well. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll probably touch on that quite a bit in this conversation. But that's the situation. Essentially, GameStop has been doing so poorly the last couple of years and been in a strong decline that now they're like essentially ready to throw in the towel is what it seems like. They're like, hey, who wants to just purchase us up, own all of our assets, do whatever you want with us, close this down, turn us into something else, merge us into another business, try to save us. Whatever the case is, they're basically saying, we're waving the white flag, please take us home. Now, this comes a few months after it was announced that GameStop's newest and very short-lived CEO actually stepped down. Apparently, he only operated and acted as the CEO for GameStop for 3 months, taking over from the previous guy whose name I can't remember. And he took over, and within 3 months, he was already stepping down. And when he stepped down, the statement was he was stepping down for personal reasons. At the time, I was kind of theorizing that maybe it was actually just a health thing. I mean, a vague statement of personal reasons and then just kind of disappearing usually means that it's something more along those lines. And so I was actually worried, okay, I know GameStop's in trouble, but I feel like he would only step down after 3 months if maybe there's something wrong. Maybe he's very sick, maybe he was diagnosed with something, maybe it's something that happened to a family member, wife or kids, you know, something so serious that he needs to step away. A weird parallel that I draw to that was when, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's like when Zack Snyder, who was at the time directing the Justice League movie, had something horrific happen to his daughter, and because of that, he actually stepped away from the movie. I mean, but well before he even finished it. And so, obviously, that's a different movie conversation, but in a similar vein where it's like, nothing necessarily happened to Zack Snyder, but something so tragic in his life happened that he had to stop working, I wondered if maybe that was what was happening with GameStop. But now that it's been a few months since even that happened, we haven't heard anything about what's been going on about his health or any other reasons for why he stepped away. And now we're in this situation where they're trying to sell themselves off to essentially either save the company or just abandon it outright. I pretty much think that that's not the case. I don't think it was a health thing, which is good. I mean, I don't want anyone to be unhealthy or sick or dying or whatever. But regardless, it definitely isn't good news. It wasn't good PR and press. It's like, well, this must be a money thing. I mean, I was the only one thinking it's a health thing. Everyone else was saying it's a business thing, it's a money thing, they're not doing well, he couldn't turn the ship around in 3 months, so he just got out of Dodge while the getting was good. And so that's kind of what leads us to this current situation. So I think one of the main things that I wanted to address in this video about GameStop and them being in such trouble and the fact that they're probably not going to be around in 3 to 5 years is, I know this will be an unpopular opinion. I'm prepared to be that guy with, you know, the only guy with this opinion, essentially. But honestly, like, I'm sad about this. I don't like to see GameStop, a company that I know and have loved in the past, and have also shared many personal moments with, I'm sad to see them in trouble and think about them having to close shop and go away. And there are two main reasons why it makes me sad. Before I get into those two reasons, I need to state, it's not like I haven't been upset with them lately. The current GameStop, the new GameStop, the GameStop operating in the 8th generation, and the GameStop doing garbage business practices like that Circle of Life thing and many other things that they've done wrong over the years recently. I don't like that GameStop. I don't like the current way that they operate. I haven't enjoyed shopping in a GameStop in a very long time. It hasn't felt right. It hasn't felt the same. It hasn't been exciting. It hasn't been the best place to go get video games, which has been one of the hugest mistakes that they've made and has also led to their downfall. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm making this fluff piece on GameStop. Like, the current GameStop is their own problem, and I am not a huge fan. Absolutely, I think all the bad crappy press they've gotten over the recent years has been deserved because they've created these situations. That being said, let's move into why this makes me sad. There are two main reasons why I'm sad about this. One is the fact that, and many of you guys have heard me mention this in the past, I actually worked for GameStop for 3 years during a huge chunk of the 6th generation, 3.5 years or so. Back from 2002 to 2005 or so, it was within those years, during the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era, when the Xbox and GameCube were pretty new within their first year. I started working for GameStop, and you know, I loved that job. I loved that time in my life. This is a personal thing that many people might not be able to relate to, and honestly, nowadays, most people that have worked for GameStop have worked for them in more recent years, but I go way back, man, early 2000s. GameCube, PS2, Xbox, like I said, that was a different era in GameStop. It was a different era in the gaming industry, where the gaming industry was going as a hobby and also starting to get taken more seriously. The technology was getting better with the consoles. We moved into the first console with a hard drive. We were just right before HD graphics. I mean, it was a very interesting, booming time for the industry and the hobby, and it felt great. And the company, GameStop, working for them at that time, reflected the growing passion of the gamer, and I loved talking with people, and I was managing the GameStop, and people loved me. They loved coming in to talk to me. Many of my best friends, even to this day, that I still have, are people who I met through GameStop, either by being customers or people who I worked with at the various stores that I worked at, including, like, my best buddy ever was somebody who I met through GameStop at that time. And so the quick version is that I just had a great life when I worked for GameStop. That job was part of why I had a great life. I was in my prime, my early 20s, so it was like, that's a great time to be happy. But, so it just all correlated perfectly, and, you know, the company treated me well. The reasons I left weren't really very smooth or comfortable, and that I'm actually mad at GameStop for, but I don't hold that grudge anymore. I just loved the 3.5 years that I worked there. It was so fantastic. And I just think it made me a better person, and it's probably my favorite job I've ever had as far as the work and my lifestyle around the work. Now, the other reason that I'm actually sad about GameStop going is definitely the bigger, more important reason. I personally think that this is huge. And this makes me incredibly sad, and you guys will know why because you know me. To me, GameStop potentially going away, failing, going under, being sold, bought out, and just disappearing, to me that represents kind of the death of the retail and physical games media age. It's one of the biggest steps towards this all-digital future. They are essentially, even though they've done so much to create their own problems, and I promise I'm going to get to that, just on the surface level, I think that this kind of represents where the game industry is going, and I think that they are one of the first and biggest casualties, or they will be, of the digital age of gaming. Because GameStop relies wholly on physical game sales, and then of course all the garbage think geek crap that it fills all their stores nowadays that I honestly just hate. It's such a disaster and a mess going into a GameStop. They have no idea what their identity is, and they did that to try to make up for slowing sales when games weren't selling as well, so they're like, let's start selling other geek stuff because we understand geeks and nerds. Just put crap on t-shirts and sell it that way, and that's what they'll buy. And it's like, you guys couldn't be more out of touch. I mean, obviously we love our geeky stuff. I wear a geeky t-shirt in every episode, don't get me wrong, but that's not how you save your video game business, by pretending like you understand dork culture and you're just going to be the hot topic of video games, or I don't know. It didn't work to me. And so, long story short, they just represent that casualty, is essentially what I'm getting at here, because people have less of a reason to go in to buy their video games. from GameStop. The Think Geek stuff wasn't saving them or bailing them out, clearly. So video game sales slowing because people get more and more into downloading games or streaming games. You know, most of the indie game scene, which is now a humongous market of gaming, is digital. Like I'm sure it's in the realm of 85 to 95% of like indie game content is digital only or primarily digital. You know, and people love to just download games. They're less into physical game stuff, and I think it's very sad. I hate that. You guys know me. I will say that I appreciate the option. All I care about in this respect is I just want the option for people who like digital to have digital and people who like physical like me to have physical, and I don't ever want the physical thing to go away. It will eventually, and I understand that, but as I've said before, I want that to be as far off into the future as possible, so losing GameStop now in 2018, 2019, or whenever this may happen, if it does, basically indicates, man, the primary, the ultimate shopping experience, shopping location for video games and for gamers across the country and across the world couldn't handle it, couldn't make up the loss of funds and revenue from digital game sales. They couldn't recoup their customer base. They couldn't adjust with the market and adjust with the times properly, make a smart correction to save their business, and they couldn't do it. The strongest guys out there, man, they couldn't work around the fact that digital game sales were changing the way video games are bought and sold. They relied way too heavily on their used games market, and as digital went up, they tried to push used games even harder and gave worse deals, and it just didn't work. And so, essentially, over the years, people have been abandoning GameStop, and hey, I'm one of those people too. Now, here's the thing though, and I said I was going to touch on this. It's not like GameStop hasn't also created their own problems here with poor business practices, and most importantly, like I was just alluding to, not course correcting with the market properly. I cannot believe how they've dropped the ball here. To me, one of the biggest reasons that they're failing, beyond just digital game sales, is also physical game sales through the internet. So it's not GameStop's stupid website where you're paying for shipping and you're paying full price and sometimes more than full price for games. Honestly, it's Amazon. The end, it's Amazon. The Best Buy Gamers Club, which was around for a while, yes, that was something, but it's really Amazon. That was the game changer that showed, hey, it's like you're buying stuff digitally because you're on the internet or on your phone, but you're getting the physical game that you want. And it's been this great amalgamation of the best of both worlds. It's got the convenience of the digital and the internet age, and it's got the realness of a real video game, the tangibility of a real video game, and beyond that, Amazon with Amazon Prime has offered a 20% discount for brand new games when you pre-order them. And GameStop, those morons that I have loved in the past, they have not corrected with that. They not one time offered anything to combat that. And Amazon's game business just grew and grew and grew. That's the way I buy my games now. I can just, whenever I want, I just pick up my phone. I want to order this game. Boom. 9 times out of 10, I have a brand new game at my house the day it releases. Not always, to be fair, but most of the time, the day it releases. And I've saved 20%. I saved $12 on the game. Brand new. Physical. In its package. In its cellophane and wrapper. And GameStop has just been turning a blind eye to this. Like, and I get it. You know, having to sell games at a discount can hurt your bottom line. I'm not going to pretend to be a businessman and understand why you should or shouldn't do that. All I can say is from the consumer's perspective, there's no competition. I don't have to go anywhere to get my game. I get the physical game I want, and I save a bunch of money doing it. GameStop has been like, yeah, but we have Walking Dead figures in our store that nobody wants, so come buy games from us, I guess? A horrible, tragic business decision. I think one of the main decisions that they made poorly specifically, beyond just the market changing and they couldn't stop the market from changing, the biggest active role that they played in their demise, I think, was not adjusting to Amazon's way of selling games and their discounts on games. And to make it even worse, GameStop exacerbated this problem to the most offensive degree with their Circle of Life program. A lot of you guys remember a year or 2 years ago, they had temporarily implemented this thing where they were telling all their employees, like, sell used games, lie about having new games, do it or you're fired. Essentially, that's like the really quick paraphrasing version. There's way more finite details. But that's the ultimate kind of gist of what they were doing. They were pushing used games sales to a way that it was uncomfortable. It was not the right deal for the consumer, and they got called out and busted for it. And to me, what I saw happening there with the Circle of Life program was they were losing money to game sales. They didn't want to try to adjust to what Amazon was doing and offer better deals for games and just save the consumer money to try to gain consumer trust and drive revenue that way and bring people into the stores. Instead, they wanted to lie to the consumer, cheat the consumer, and force garbage deals on crappy used games instead of selling the games that people wanted or selling quality products. This is the most skeezy, underhanded, excuse me, disgusting, business-minded way to try to combat the changing market that I've ever seen or heard of. And the fact that it happened to a company that was once my favorite company, that I used to work for, that I've loved shopping at in the past, is tragic, man. Like, what a way to showcase how much you don't understand what you're doing. As a business, you don't understand the market you're in, you don't understand the consumer you're selling to. That whole situation just basically shows me that. And then, of course, you know, we come back to end this video here, we come back to the idea of, at the end of the day, still the market was changing in a way that even maybe adapting to Amazon might not have helped them. I don't really know. Still, the changing market was probably one of the biggest factors. People just don't like buying physical games. Like, I gotta tell you, if Amazon didn't offer what they offered, I wouldn't start downloading digital. I would still be going to GameStop because it's like, well, at least I get my physical games that way. But Amazon's day one delivery and 20% discount just couldn't be matched. So, I don't know. That's just kind of where I see the GameStop thing, man. So yeah, you know, I'll just end this video with the last reminder that I loved my time working for GameStop. 2002, 2004, 2005, what an incredible time. So many great games came out. I talked about this recently on my Metroid video. That's when Metroid Prime released, within months after me working for the company. And I think of Metroid Prime, I think of Super Mario Sunshine, The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, all of these games that were coming out, GameCube games at the time, as my fanship of gaming was just starting to just shoot into the stratosphere, and my fanship of Nintendo. But of course, I loved the Xbox. I loved Halo so much. I eventually jumped on board with the PS2, incredible games on that console, one of the best console libraries of all time. Knights of the Old Republic came out during this era, so many different things, Resident Evil 4, it was incredible. And so I loved working for the company back in the day when it was just not a crappy business to work for, and they didn't run the business in a way that was trying to rip off their consumers, and they weren't out of touch with the consumer and the gamer. They were actually in touch with it. It was great. But that's not the GameStop we know now, man. They're a different company, and they're in a world of hurt, partly because the market changed and they couldn't stop it from changing, and partly because they didn't know how to course correct and try to adapt with the market and make smarter business decisions that were pro-consumer instead of just pro-GameStop money, money, money. So that's it, man. That's why I'm sad. I would like to see GameStop continue. I would like to see them fix the problem, fix the revenue, offer fun jobs to young people, and offer great deals to the gamer and the consumer, and keep the physical and retail game market alive. That's what I would like to see happen, but I don't think it's going to. Nothing is set in stone. They're only just now starting this selling process, so who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of years, and we'll just have to wait and see. If there's any major updates or changes, obviously I'll make a video and discuss it with you guys at that time. So that's it for me today. Discuss the GameStop debacle. What do you think about the company as a whole, the recent news, the stuff that I talked about in the video about Amazon sales, digital sales, the fact that I'm sad because I used to work for the company when they were really great, all these different things. Please discuss it below. That is going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.